Hey Flesh fam. Today we're talking about sequels. So Gearbox showed a trailer for Borderlands 3 a couple days ago, and it looked a lot like Borderlands, and I wasn't really excited. You might ask, why are you not excited, Fleshmonk? It looks exactly like the other games, and didn't you love the originals so much that you made a video on how to find a specific revolver barrel that you couldn't find in Borderlands 1? In a video that you eventually unlisted? Yes I did. Let's say there's a game, and it's called Dookieville. Right, now Dookieville is super good, and people love it, right? So obviously Dookieville 2 has to come out. What would you rather have? Dookieville 2, which is everything you loved about Dookieville, with just some tiny adjustments? Or would you rather have Dookieville Son of the Dookie, which would take a whole new spin on the original concept? Feel free to comment below on which Dookieville you prefer. Personally, I prefer the latter style of sequel in anything. I think that when you like something so much you want the sequel, it's sort of a misleading feeling. Whenever a sequel comes out that doesn't really do anything different or reinvent the wheel, it's always kind of perceived to be worse than the original. Take Far Cry 4, Knack 2, Middle-earth Shadow of War. It's not so much that they're bad, it just means that they're not really, innovating anything. Sure, for these things the window dressing might be different, but the core is still the same. Nothing really changes, and while it's still good, it's a bit stale. For movies, at least the effect is lessened because it's only 2.5 hours at most. If you watch, let's say, Kingsman 1 and Kingsman 2 back to back, you might be a little bored at 2, but they're not all that bad and it's just 2 hours. Games, however, are a different story. The repetition carries over for hours. How many hours do you spend on a game like Shadow of Mordor? How many hours do you spend doing the same stuff like stealth, counters, nemesis system, attacking over and over again? Riding these big dog things. And then in the sequel it's just that, again, except this time there's a graphical uptick in quality. It's kind of like, yeah, it's still good, but nowhere near as impressive just because it's the same thing again. Look at Pokemon. How many times can I wake up, move to a new town, get my first Pokemon, battle my rival, and yada yada yada. It's been like 10 games? How many Reptilian starters can I choose? How many gym leaders can I beat? How many of the Elite Four can I grind into a pulp? I didn't even finish Sun because it all just felt so repetitive. The best sequels, in my opinion, take what works and adds a new spin to it. I think a good example of this would be Batman Arkham City. Arkham Asylum is kind of like this Metroidvania type game with limited scope and particularly designed levels, so you can't really go anywhere that you want whenever you want. It's kind of locked behind unlocks. And it's a very focused experience. But when you hit the sequel, that overworld is completely different. Gone is the curated, specifically designed places that you can or can't go because of lack of gadgets. Instead, you go to different missions by playing around in an open world. It becomes more akin to Spider-Man 2 than it does Metroid. All of a sudden you add the fun traversal stuff from Spider-Man 2, except it's Batman this time. What follows is 2 sequels that don't necessarily live up to that. 2 sequels that feel like Dookieville 2 type sequels. Arkham Origins is basically if you handed Arkham City to another developer and you were just like, hey you, make Arkham City, but like just make Arkham City. Arkham Origins and Arkham City are basically the same game, and that's not the worst thing in the world. The problem is low investment frequently comes with low reward. Even if Origins contains a nice and tight story about Batman's early years, most people can't get past the fact that it's just City. So with this game series so far, we got one sequel that has some nice changes and another that's more of the same. In my opinion, if you want an improvement, you usually got to expand on what you had, or change it up. And therein lies the dilemma. Do we make Dookieville 2, or do we make Son of the Dookie? Because to these developers and publishers, it's all about risk versus reward. Do we put in new gameplay mechanics and hope people like it, or do we go for the sure thing, just again? So far we gave an example of changes being a positive thing, but here's an example of that backfiring. At least for me. Yeah, this is a backfire. I personally think that the Batmobile didn't need to be part of these games, and I like the core gameplay more than the Batmobile stuff, so just get that out of here. And I know I said that I like the gameplay more than the Batmobile sequences, but it's also just the same shit again. Now all you have is a meter that lets you do instant takedowns, but it's the same thing. How many times can you have a sequel that just is the same shit over and over and over again? And the answer is actually, a lot. Borderlands 3, from the looks of this initial trailer, just seems to be more the same. I bet if I intercut footage from this trailer with gameplay from 2 or the pre-sequel, you wouldn't even notice the difference. And I did. You got the same environment, same type of vibe, maybe the guns are a bit different and the characters are different, but it looks the same. Except for that one flash of a city environment, nothing really stands out to me. It just looks like Borderlands, woo! It's a paradox that plagues sequel development. After a very highly anticipated waiting period, does Gearbox take a creative risk and take Borderlands 3 to the next level? Or do they play it safe and just try their best not to fuck it up? Not to mention you're also dealing with the corporate implications because Gearbox is a company. They gotta make money first and worry about prestige later. Maybe that's why they're so focused on releasing Borderlands everything. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if Borderlands 3 is more of the same. Maybe some shareholders are just like, hey Gearbox, let's make some more money! Maybe it's just because the last games they made were like, these guys. And also the head of the studio is embroiled in some sort of legal battle. But basically, what I'm trying to say is it's all very complicated. And sometimes it sucks when we get sequels that are retreads, especially if it's because of outside factors like money, financial security, or just intense pressure from publishers and shareholders. It's easier to make a sequel to a bad or unremarkable game than it is to make a sequel to a good one. Like Rage 2 looks fun and people don't really mind because Rage 1 generally didn't impress people or really stay in the public consciousness. But now you got superpowers and it seems like you're always on LSD. It seems like it could be a cool game. But then you have things like Fallout 4, which made all the dialogue voiced, added base building, and narrowed down some story choices. They could have made just an exact copy of Fallout 3, but they didn't, and then they got a more lukewarm reception. Probably with a lot of fans saying, just give us more Fallout 3. And with that, you kind of understand why retread sequels come out at the rate that they do. If you're working at, like, let's say Treyarch or DICE, you're probably on this grueling schedule, and every time you want to innovate, some person's probably like, okay, but we gotta get this done in a year, and also don't rock the boat so much. So we end up with stuff like this. I'm sure these developers are under a lot of pressure from everybody else to try and make these games the best that they can be, but also to make them sort of the same so that they still have the same success. Even though it feels the same over and over and over again, I guess it's only a bad thing to some people. After all, it's not like there's a shortage of game sequels that don't really change anything. All I know is what I personally appreciate are games that change things up a bit. Like, I never really played Risk of Rain 1, but Risk of Rain 2 looks really cool because they don't look like the same game at all. I wouldn't want to just enjoy a game and then have the sequel just be the exact same thing. I think very rarely can you pull something off like that and actually have it be really good, like Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider. Personally, very often, I think after experiencing something good, I'm always seeking more of the same, but then if I ever get more of the same, I just realize that it feels kind of hollow and feels kind of empty. I think that a big piece of things being good is the surprise of it, or the first time experience of it. To sum it up, for me personally, if you're gonna make a sequel, just make new shit, man. I don't want to play your game just better. You can just patch the game if you're gonna do that. Alright, thanks for watching, and stay cool, and stay fleshy, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and if you're here and you're still listening, thank you, personally, you, I'm talking to you, you're the best, thank you so much. Yeah.